Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast is Critical Blast.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish. They're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam! Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to Kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Wednesday night. That means it is Wednesday Wham here with the Silverline team. I'm your host, Scott Wakefield. I'm joined by Mr. Rob Davis, Barb Kailberg down there, and we have a very special guest, Pat Mooney. I'll give you an introduction here before you have to say anything. Pat Mooney has been kind enough to join us to talk about his current Kickstarter campaign that is going on right now. That's what I mean by current. Right now, on Kickstarter called Nations and Cannons. It is an incredible looking product, and I'm going to let him explain all about it. But put this in the back of your to-do list. Don't leave the show right now. You're going to go to Kickstarter.com sometime tonight, and you're going to go check out Nations and Cannons. But Pat Mooney, good evening. You have the floor all this whole hour. We want to let you talk. So what I thought we'd do is we would let you introduce yourself, your background, your team, from the kernel of the project to its current, however much detail you want to give us, we'll probably ask some questions along the way. But we would love to leave room to talk about the actual. I've got questions about the actual game. Rob over here. And by means of introduction, Rob is an artist. Does the visuals. Barb does as well. Barb colors and inks and has been doing more pencils lately, correct, Barb?
No, writing.
More writing. Okay.
Right.
All right. Yeah. And Barb's got her Divinity title has been doing great with Silverline, and Rob's got a lot of titles to his name as far as what he's worked on, and a great resume. And we got our regulars. Vic says hello, hey Vic, and then he's throwing the. We got the long URL.
Thank you kindly. There we go.
And we will have that in all of our socials and our comments and so forth. On YouTube, Facebook, and so forth. We'll share that out there. But Pat, I will let you run with it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Scott, so much for that very generous introduction. So my name is Pat Mooney. I'm the lead designer at Flagbearer Games, and the project that we're working on, it's kind of a no-brainer for us to pop in here and say hello to the folks over at Steam Patriots. It's a tabletop role-playing game set during the American Revolution.
Yes.
We are a game set that is based around 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but effectively what we do is we give you all the tools you need to rip out the elves and wizards and replace them with muskets and artillery pieces. So it's a entirely historically oriented campaign setting and source book. So we have both our core rules, which have been out for about 2 years now in the general public, and we've kind of been slowly getting them out, really with an emphasis and a hope to reach into the educational market and to really get this thing into schools, libraries, D&D clubs, wherever they exist. And the project that we are now kickstarting is for our first full-length source book, which has a number of different adventures that cover the first half of the Revolution, from 1775 and the Siege of Boston all the way through to the darkest hour at Valley Forge.
I love it. And Pat, we were able to chat just a little because I came across your project. I honestly don't know where. I saw it somewhere in my RevWar searchings and hashtags.
It's a pretty small community. We all play together after a while.
So it caught wind of it, and you were gracious enough to have a phone call with me so we could pick each other's brains. And you guys have. I got the impression. I mean, it's obvious through your research that you guys have spent countless hours researching. Don't know if I lost you there. Lost your image there. Are you still there, Pat?
Still here, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's obvious you guys have done the legwork to make an incredible game. And it shows. So I've been thumbing through the PDF. Do you thumb through a digital PDF? I guess scrolling through.
It's a very good question.
Virtual thumb.
Virtual thumbing through the PDF, which 118 pages, is that correct? Yeah, 118 pages of the core rule book. And I'm blown away. I'm blown away by how well it's done and how well it's presented, and then the level of detail. So how much are you involved with that? What's your team do? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I can talk about kind of the genesis of the project and some of the challenges that we faced along the way. It waxes and wanes depending on what tasks we've got, on the plate right now. But we're like a 6-person team. We're pretty small. We self-funded our first book, and we went to Kickstarter for this one. Now that we think it's in a ready state to share with the world and get out there, and we're having a really positive response. We funded in just over 3 days. So that's been
wow.
It's been really gratifying to see.
You guys are killing it.
Honestly, what's really fun, it's wild. Like, I probably wouldn't have described it as I wouldn't have thought that it would be like an adrenaline rush, but when the comments come in and then I get a chance to sit down and respond, and some of them are like, how are you accomplishing this very weird and very particular thing, in the Dungeons and Dragons rule set? And it's great. We're having a great dialogue with folks. People are super amped up, asking lots of great questions in there. Effectively, I've been working in this field for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I do gamification. I work at a small studio based out of Brooklyn that does lots of projects that are oriented around finding ways to take complex problems or complex like data sets and create things that are understandable for the end user, you know, for education, but also for, you know, journalism and biomed and stuff like that. But I first got bit by the history bug several years ago when I was working on a project for the American Revolution Institute of the Society of the Cincinnati. And boy, howdy, that is a mouthful.
Yes, it is. I'm familiar with them. Yep.
Love history.
Yeah, but they had us work on a project called Revolutionary Choices, which is about, you know, not so much it's a non-war war game is the way to think about it, right? It's about all of the challenges and the different dilemmas that faced the Continental Congress, the Army, and all the constituent states, and how you're trying to unpack the notion that like the war was preordained, right? And to really get into the sense that this was this long, grueling war of attrition that lasted for 7 years. Nobody had any guns or powder. You had hyperinflation running rampant throughout the country, right? And Washington, really, his genius was not as a battlefield commander, but as a logistics officer, and his ability to, you know, keep his army together through thick and thin, you know, through all of those
His
travails.
genius was making a lot out of nothing.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%, right?
Yeah.
Yankee ingenuity.
Yeah.
Told no the whole time, pretty much.
And so, you know, after learning about that and doing a deep dive into the history, and particularly, I'm also a huge art history geek, right? And so a lot of the artwork in the book is actually from either period paintings, some that are from the 18th century, some that are immediately afterwards in the early 19th century, and some are just from the golden age of American illustration, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Scott, right? You know, the sort of the you know, early 20th century great masters like Howard Pyle and N.C. Wyeth, right?
Yes.
You know, who just incredible stuff.
Love
and
that stuff.
The stuff that really, like, you know, brought the iconic imagery of what this time period and what this conflict was like into the American imagination during some of those great illustrated, you know, novels and spot books they did. So that's great, right? Like, it's being able to go down weird rabbit holes and find image sources, and knowing that they're, like, you know, generally like quite historically accurate, because those guys didn't mess around when it came to like uniforms and costumes and, you know, all the stuff that they needed to do to render it accurately. We think that brings like a really fun like level of authenticity to the thing, and really grounds you in that period.
I love it. Who's your who did some of your sketches in the rule book?
My buddy Giancarlo Montalbano is an artist, does a lot of games and game concept art, and he did the key characters that we have. And so the book opens up with a section, in Dungeons and Dragons, you know, the first thing you do is you pick your species. Yeah. Right. Yeah. You're fantastical. I'm an elf. I'm a dwarf. I'm, you know, whatever. And obviously in a game set in real life, everybody was human. So how do we differentiate that? We came up with a system called roles. So you're kind of picking your role in the party. And then by doing that, you know, you are, what's your skill set, your background, like how are you able to use your training to kind of provide, you know, a special perspective, or the ability to work on some unique abilities there. If you're a pioneer or a veteran, you know, or a scout. Yep, exactly. Right. And those have a bunch of character art that we did that we really wanted to do was to find 12 historical figures, you know, kind of larger than life figures. Some of them are like folk heroes, right? But figures that, you know, we have, they're in the historical record. We can point to them. We can say that they exist, and they're a diverse cast, you know, that cover kind of all walks of life. And so, you know, of the officers here on the right, giving you the kind of a little bit of the stink eye there, that's Daniel Shays. which, if you're familiar with your post-revolutionary history at all, he was an officer who didn't like one bit the way that pensioners were treated after the war, and led a little bit of a secondary rebellion.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really fun inclusion.
Yeah. So I'm trying. You're talking about the art. I wanted to scroll. Yeah. So you got your classes here. Classes, right?
Oh, these are the roles. Yeah.
Roles, okay.
Just talking about.
Roles. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
That's the word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pioneer. Yeah. I just love the art. I love the art.
Yeah.
That
It does a great job
it's
of
really
of-
great.
Thank you. Yeah, like of really bringing it to life.
Yeah.
And Peter Francisco, he's one of those tall tale type characters where, apparently he was like almost 7 foot tall, in the 18th century when malnutrition was
Huge.
rampant,
Yeah.
right? So they called him Washington's Hercules.
Yeah, I remember that story.
Well, there's a reenactor named Travis Bowman. I gotta connect you with him. I don't know. Have you seen the Lusso movie that's coming out? I'm trying to think of the actor's name who's playing him. He's a big muscly guy, and he's one of those guys that's in every show, like he's he's in lots of sitcoms, and he's in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. I'm trying to think of his name, but there's a miniseries coming out based around Peter Francisco. So,
Oh wow, that's
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, trying to think of. Let me
That is completely news to me. I'll have to check that out.
Lusso, Luso.
You learn things in our podcast.
The movie. Yeah. I want to connect you with him. What's his name? Brian Patrick Wade. Big, tall, muscly guy.
Okay.
And so he plays superheroes and all that sort of stuff. He's kind of shaped like one. He's playing Peter Francisco. Kidnapped from the Azores, right? And
It's sort of an enigmatic origin story.
Yeah.
And, we'll never quite know
Exactly.
where he came from.
Yeah, there's stuff that points to who he is, but a lot of can't quite prove it, but
Yeah.
they're pretty sure. Yeah.
This this renegade character, the one on the right here, this is Seymour Burr, who was enslaved by the Burr family. And the story goes, and this is fairly well documented, that he threatened, he went to the Burrs and he said, if you don't let me fight for the patriot cause, I'm just going to defect for the British. And they decided, okay, well, you're going one way or the other. So fight for your freedom for our side.
Better on our side than the other.
Yeah. And so I think that's great. It's a great example of of someone who was in a position where they didn't have a lot of agency, they didn't have a lot of privilege, but they found a way to use the conflict to their betterment, right? And to be a hero, to be able to fight for something that they truly believed in, out of the mess that a war can bring.
Yeah. You got your scholars here.
David Bushnell on the left, the fencing guy, which may be of certain interest to Steam Patriots fans here. This guy was the inventor of the world's first combat submarine, which is something that we just had. We had a stretch goal for our Kickstarter to do full-fledged mechanics for the Turtle, which is basically like an oak casket, like a barrel,
right?
That he stuck some propellers on. Famously, he couldn't figure out how to light the thing in the darkness when it's submerged underwater, and Ben Franklin suggested that he use foxfire to illuminate the dial. So that's one of the effects that we have.
That's cool. So cool.
But we hit that stretch goal. We're gonna be doing mechanics for it, so you can use it, and maybe you will be able to, in the adventure that takes place in occupied New York with 32,000 troops in New York Harbor, bring that submarine to bear and succeed where David did not historically on blowing up some of those Royal Navy ships.
That's so cool. I love it. I love all the details. I love all the. You and I talked a little. It's you want to smash everything you find in, because there's a billion little nuggets from the war that are so cool. it's tough limiting yourself, right? That's what I found. I mean, you have to pick just a few.
This was one of those books where, you know, when we printed it, because it was our very first thing, we self-published, right? We had to be very judicious about the page count to keep that down at all costs. So I could tell you some horror stories about the kerning that went on in this book, right? About just, you know, I'm not from the comics world, but, you know, now that I've kind of like bootstrapped my way into being an independent publisher, like I could absolutely share your pain in that way. We've squeezed as much as we possibly could, you know, out of that 118 pages for this book.
Yeah. It's well done. Well, we got a couple comments here. Pops says, hey, Pops.
Hi, Pops.
Hey, Pops.
And Vic's throwing up the URL for our campaign. We'll talk about that, of course. Shameless promotion. And Vic is saying, reminds him of some of his old history books, but way cooler. Way
Yeah,
cooler.
more
If they presented history, which, Pat, you're saying that's half the point, right?
That's absolutely a big priority for us. We have an educational outreach program where if you're an educator, you know, a homeschooler, a librarian, you work as a docent at like a historical institution, whatever the case may be, you go on our website, you click on that, you fill out the form, and we will send you a copy of the core rules, and we'll put it in the mail for you absolutely free. Because we want to get this out there. We think that it's a really great way. You can follow our adventure campaign, right? That we have up on Kickstarter, but you can also tell your own stories. You know, we want to make this available so that if there's, you know, a battle or a skirmish or something in your town or your county, you know, your state, that is you can a way to like engage with local history, engage with events that happened, you know, just down the road 250 years ago. That's great. That's such a cool way to get kids interested in the time period, you know. And like I think we're both trying to doing the same thing there. Like we want to tell cool stories, but it's also like there's a love of history and a love of this era, you know, and there's a lot that we can do to make it feel alive again and not like this stuffy old thing that you read about in a history textbook.
Right. Yeah. Who won this day? What was the
there were real
history.
people involved.
Exactly. And that's why
they had to eat, they had to, you know, they had to do all the functions modern human beings had to do. Plus they were fighting for a cause. It's incredible. Yeah. Pretty cool.
And presenting it like this, being a character in it is really, really, really cool. I don't want to jump too far away from the beginnings in the origin, but I wanted to where did the idea come from? I mean, was it just like duh to you, or what are you a huge D&D fan? I mean, Rob runs his campaign. Rob's a DM, and I've been playing since
I haven't for a very long time.
AD&D
I have run campaigns,
yeah.
AD&D and Pathfinder.
Yep.
As I call it, D&D 3.75.
3.75. Yeah. Well, that's interestingly. So there's a fun story there, right? So you know, this works because we give a detailed black powder system. We think probably the best black powder system that anyone's devised for 5e because we've balanced it. We've made it something with intentionality all the way through. But you know, people have been trying to add guns in D&D for forever.
Yeah.
To mixed results, right? Pathfinder, originally, Pathfinder 1.0, you know, first did it way back, I don't know, a decade, 12 years ago with the Gunslinger class. And that's a very, very successful class, very interesting take on it. That Gunslinger then got ported over to 5th edition for Critical Role because Critical Role began its life as a Pathfinder show and then became a D&D 5e show. And so they made a version of that Gunslinger for 5th edition with a bunch of, you know, basic rules and misfires and how that works. And that was our starting point for the black powder system because we wanted to be compatible with something that people know. Now, as we've iterated and evolved on it, we've made some deviations. You know, for instance, you can't move and reload a firearm in the same turn because, you know, at the time period, it's a 6-foot long thing. You're ramming it down, right? You're standing tall, right? You can't be prone. You have to be standing up
it's-
and like in the line of fire.
You got your little wads of cloth and your
Yeah, yeah, exactly, right, and all that stuff. But it has its genesis in a lot of those ideas, and so you try not to steal too much from the Gunslinger. Like I have intentionally not read through the Gunslinger in Pathfinder 2 because I don't want to be like unduly grab their ideas. But we're in a similar design space, doing similar cool things.
Yeah, it's obvious. I'm probably gonna say this multiple times. Looking through, I did a skim, and then I was just like blown away, and I went back and your rule sets, the detail, the thought that went into it, and also it makes sense. You kind of followed the layout of the D&D rule books, so it wasn't. I mean, why reinvent anything? It's something familiar and new at the same time. And it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong, your rule set, you put together kind of a player's handbook and a monster manual and a little bit of a DM's guide all in one for ease of use.
Yeah, that's you still need the player's handbook or the free version. It's all available now for free online through some SRD websites. But it's a one-stop shop. The core, we have a quick start, which is basically everything in that book except for the DM facing chapters. That's available for download on our website. It's like a 70-page PDF for free. Again, as part of our educational mission, because we want to get the books into educators' hands, but we also want students to be able to download it and make their own characters and read up on all that stuff for sure.
Yeah, we're getting to the halfway point, and folks that have joined us, we've got Pat Mooney here. From Flagbearer Games, right? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have created a game called Nations and Cannons, and it is a Revolutionary War setting for the Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition rules. And I just clicked over to your Kickstarter campaign and saw the green number go up. So that's awesome.
Great success.
Went up.
Maybe
so
somebody has split their screen and is flying while they're watching.
They are killing it on
that's
Kickstarter.
Fine. Just don't go away.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I don't want to steal your thunder, right? Like, if you haven't backed Steam Patriots yet already, 100% go over there. We're going to be sending out an email with your...
too. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep. Steam Patriots is on Kickstarter as well, so we don't want people to go away from our show, but get over to Kickstarter.com. You can search Steam Patriots, and you'll see our project, and then click search Nations and Cannons, and we will have the URLs for everybody to see and click on. We want you to support their project. They're really pushing hard for this to be available for education, to get people young and old into interested in history. And this is one of the best things I can think of to do it, because you jump in. D&D is having a renaissance. Tabletop role-playing games are having a renaissance, and it's awesome. And so you're doing it all right, and you're like at 190% of your goal. So good job.
So a connecting question, a question that can connect, if I can get it out, put my teeth in properly today, that connects Steam Patriots to your game. Are there any elements of steampunk in your rule set?
It's a very good question.
Is there any of that in there? And if
Scott,
not, maybe that's something that could be added on later.
Yeah, I mean, Scott and I were talking about the backdrop of like the level of technology that went into Steam Patriots, where like the point of historical diversion was. And what's interesting is that correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but the firearms that you're envisioning, the mainline firearms, right? Your Brown Besses, your muskets, are more or less the same.
Correct.
It's sort of the one that is central to the plot is the one, where like you suddenly have some new development in weapons technology.
It would be awfully hard to steam weaponize a musket, which takes,
it would be even
the average
a longer process. Vic said
this average musket during the Revolutionary War.
Wow, you too.
You could shoot 3 times in a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was slow.
Vic saying,
if you
want to make it take 5 turns to reload. So Pat, your point about weaponry. Yeah, we wanted the Steam Patriots world to be the very beginning of the steampunk technology. So in our steampunk world, we're at the beginning. The boiler exists, and so like I think of it like the Model T. Then people started having the realization, oh, I could run a PTO off my Model T and run a water pump. Oh, I could put skis on it and drive it in the winter. Oh, I could. So the Franklin boiler exists, and spoiler for those of you out there in the maritime, the Steam Patriots, when we get out on the high seas, and I say when, how do you apply a boiler to a wooden sailing vessel at the end of the 1700s? Well, first of all,
without burning the ship up.
And like people don't think about it, but the introduction of cold seawater on a boiler means explosion.
Yes.
So of course the captains, the shipbuilders would not want these boilers. So we're thinking it's got to be introduced. Okay, so they bring a portable, they put it on a like a skid that they can haul in and out, that can run a pump or run the capstan. That would be think of how you would integrate technology. So you're talking about weapons. Maybe we'll have a big steam cannon. That's, you're not going to have people with boilers firing steam guns. But we do have an electrical weapon based on real technology, far-fetched in our rendition of it. But
it's got to have some fantastical elements. Especially in comics. You've got to have some sort of
What I was going to recommend, so if you wanted to use the Nations and Cannons rules to run your own Steam Patriots game, to talk about bringing it all together.
That's
right?
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So there are 5 classes that we support, for historical games. There's the Fighter, Ranger, Barbarian, and Rogue, which all make sense in kind of a mundane historical context. And we've introduced a new one called the Firebrand, which is your Sam Adams, Alexander Hamilton type. They give inspirational speeches. They can be demagogues. They can browbeat their opponents.
I like that.
They get an ability. My favorite ability they get is
on
one
their
called
alignment.
Pamphleteer.
Yeah.
They get an ability called Pamphleteer, where they can weaponize the postal service by like writing, creating an effect, inscribing it into a letter, and then sending it to their opponent.
Oh, that's so fantastic! That's so I love that, man. That's genius.
Yeah, it's that's absolutely my favorite part of like one of my favorite mechanics we've built in there. But so those are all oriented around mundane world, right? In the real like things that make sense in historical context. There's another class that we're definitely interested in using in future content, which is the Artificer, right? And you can convert the Artificer to be something that makes sense in kind of like a Ben Franklin polymath type, someone who a natural philosopher, or you could lean into it and double down because it's baked in, as effectively a mad scientist.
Oh, sure.
And that is like. There's a lot of material out there, to be able to like create lightning guns and stuff like that, which you can just use with that. You just take that class, and without stripping any of the magical stuff out of it, just explain it as steam powered technology, drop it straight into Nations and Cannons, boom, right? I was thinking about this a little bit, right? So if weaponry, if your standard like infantry musket isn't really changing much. The one thing that is changing is if you have those, carriages, right? If you have like steam horses, the ability to like that mobility is something that really starts to become important. One of the interesting things about the long 18th century is that, the technology of linear warfare didn't change all that much from this era to the Napoleonic Wars. What really happened was Napoleon was a genius at utilizing artillery, using it in mass barrages, and rapidly repositioning his troops and his light artillery across the field to bring it to bear in the right places at the right time. So if you've got a wagon, mounted mobile artillery piece, right, with like light cannons, but you can move across the battlefield at a gallop. That's a way where you can create an incredibly powerful thing that's really difficult for enemies to pin down, or even like use those boilers because they're heavy duty. They can lug stuff around. You could create mobile cover, right? where you've got a wagon that's got sheet metal on it or something, something that's going to be able to absorb these,
Something that
musket
horses would
balls.
have a hard time pulling,
Right.
but a
Yeah.
steam engine would not have as much trouble pulling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially,
that's-
if you can bring it to bear, and there's interesting ways if it's a wheeled carriage, right? But let's say it has difficulty over uneven terrain, but if you clear the terrain ahead, then you can create all kinds of how does the military tactics of this world diverge in that way? Because suddenly positioning and your ability to retain control of certain types of areas becomes much more important.
Pat, you're blowing my mind, and I love it. I love it. And so, quite a few minutes ago, Vic asked, he said, so when we get in this Team Patriots Nations and Cannons crossover,
so my question will right in with that.
Yeah, I would love to figure something out. We'll talk. And then Vic's saying, so you were saying about giving free stuff for the educators. What if he's an educatee? What if he's educated? I would say talk to your educators and tell them get their hands on Nations and Cannons, and then start a club.
Yeah,
with all your pals.
Yeah, and then
teachers are
once
starting.
you have the base, you can continue to do it for as long as you want. So
especially with a movie that just came out, right? There's a lot of teachers who are trying. A lot of schools and school districts that are creating D&D clubs. And so really, what our hope is, to have your cake and eat it too, where maybe your district, your administration is on the fence a little bit, we see that this is fun, it teaches math and it's and social skills and all this stuff, there's no value to it, but we don't want students to sit there and for the curriculum and pretend to be elves and wizards. Well, if you drop this in front of their lap, maybe they might change their tune, because now you've got actual historical, educational, civics-based material embedded in your role playing.
Right. It's perfect. It's perfect. Jose's jumping in. Hey, Jose. Yeah, it does look really cool. Looks really, really
Thank
cool,
you.
which is why Pat's here, because it looks cool. It is cool. It checks all the cool boxes. And Vic says, hey, Jose. And then we got and then Jose says, so there we go. And then go ahead, Rob.
Well, and we talked about this before, but the probably the crux question here is, do you have to have the D&D rules sets to play this game? Is that, or is there enough in what you've put together that you could get by without having D&D 5th edition?
Yeah, you do still need the 5th edition player's handbook,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, or one of the free versions of that rule set that's available online. Now, our hope in the long term is to follow this up with a standalone rule set, right? And we're there's a new edition of D&D that's going to be coming out in 2024. And there's a big play test, there's a bunch of stuff going along. So we're following along with that, seeing what the licensing is ultimately going to look like. But what we really want to do is to, take that rule set and fork it in software development terms, right? Create our own version, and that way, we can still be compatible.
Yeah,
exactly, right? We can still be compatible with 5e, which is cool if you want to play a Flintlock fantasy game. If you want to bring your wizards and your warlocks back into it, we just created one of our stretch goals I'm really glad that we hit this one, is for an alternate Flintlock fantasy scenario called Benjamin Franklin Banshee Slayer. So just like you, Scott, we identified old Benny boy. He's the point of divergence.
I love it.
Hey, Brent.
I love it so much. Brent, good evening. Nice to see you. Pat, Brent, Pat.
Howdy.
Pat is an awesome dude, and I think we could have a 4-hour show with him on tonight to talk about all the ins and outs. His beautiful mind and his beautiful team created a Revolutionary War setting that uses Dungeons and Dragons rules, and it is a well thought out, thoroughly researched world that is geared toward D&D fans, tabletop or RPG fans, and geared toward people getting their learn on, if they want to jump into learning about American history, or open the door to history, because history is awesome and there's so many cool,
Agreed.
endless things to learn. This puts you in the historical world, and it's awesome. So we got Vic's asking if there's a pressure cooker. You know what, Vic? I'll write a pressure cooker somewhere in the Steam Patriots world, and they can make dinner. I'll have them make buffalo wings. And yes, I am taking notes. And Jose is saying, Pat, he's reached out to a friend who's a college teacher.
Oh, thank you so much.
RPG club. Yep. Shared your campaign. Jose's an awesome dude most of the time. And Vic's saying your teachers don't like D&D. They still think it's satanic. That's a shame.
Oh, I thought we were past that point.
Yeah, I thought we were too.
Yeah.
And I'm not letting this guy in. He can hear us. We can't hear him right now. He's shaking his head. I can see him. There's somebody on the periphery in the green room. Begrudgingly, my co-creator, my good buddy,
every word,
my shipmate. That is shipmate. Rory Boyle from Coast Guard days. Rory, Pat's been here, been blowing our minds. We love him. I want to hug him because his story's so cool. And Jose is saying, when is Pat coming back to run us through? Yes.
I want that.
If we could do that, if we could do like
that'd be incredible.
A one shot, we roll up our characters and play. Oh man, yes.
I'd watch it.
Am I flaking out? Is my New York internet?
No, you come through loud and clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Surely.
Vic, maybe it's you. Maybe the problem is you, Vic. Okay.
Well, you glitched on me a little bit.
Yeah, you did me too.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's not that big a deal.
I'm sorry, everybody. It is my rural internet run by a mule. And
mine's rural internet too. So
I thought it was a rat in a cage.
Yeah, I gotta feed it. Come on, we need
Little
speed
gerbils.
up.
Wait, is that what you have kids for? Just get a bigger cage.
Turn the internet handle. Rory, what did you brew this evening?
Actually, I bottled the Irish red ale that we brewed the other week.
Ooh, all right, we may have to have a tasting. We may have to have a
I'll bring
tasting.
some up.
And viewers out there, I've known Rory for many, many years. His first batch, I give him a hard time. He was kind. Rory has a heart that loves to give gifts. His first batch, it was not good. this was 15 years ago. He brought bottles into everybody at the base, and he's like, guys, this was months of labor and love.
I did
And
something.
We all get home, and we came back. He's like, well, and we're all. It was certainly something. Thanks, Rory. He's like, well, I didn't know what to name it. I said maybe Bilgewater. but it has gotten much better with practice. Rory is brewing
The proper tutelage.
The first attempt was certainly something.
I would say
Yep.
The first that was a stout too. That was a dark one.
It was, and
then the first one I did for this class was the same one because I was determined to correct it.
We'll make a good stout. We have a local living history museum. Pat, you got to come up. It is a little past the Revolution. It's 19th century. There's the Genesee Country Village and Museum is near Rochester, not far from you. But they have a brewing. They have a brewery, and they brew beer in
the olden style. Oh,
and
wow!
Everybody asks, and they say it's one of those annoying questions. No, you can't drink it. It gets dumped, and then people are like, "Oh, it gets dumped." They say, "Well, when the rats and dead birds fall in the open vats, you probably don't want us to pour you a glass of it." And then, okay. The sanitation and the process is a little different. It is authentic. We're not going to pour you a glass of our brew, but they do have stuff there. Do
you remember
what's that?
Borzinski making a pale ale and putting it in a cask, and we had a tall ship in Erie that we would inspect, and so he put it in the hull of their ship for the season to simulate actually coming over from England.
Ooh.
Yeah, incredible.
It's cool. It's cool. Yeah. We got 2 plugs. So Genesee Country Village send us money and endorsements, and the Brig Niagara over there in Lake Erie.
There's a
Pat-
Maritime Museum there too. That's really good.
I am a fan of honey mead. Real.
I'll make you some, Barb.
yes,
I love
yes.
making mead.
And Vic's Vic, if you bring it into life, this won't be the only stream where we don't talk about. Okay, no, you didn't say it though.
Yes.
Yeah.
He didn't. No one
You're-
said.
you-
No one said the other. Not wars.
or
Or
Trek.
that Emma, or that English guy,
or that other, that guy with the gun.
English spy.
It's a long
we
running
got-
joke with it where we always get around to talking.
We always
about
mention a few
one of those sci-fi franchises
shows and a British agent that works for MI6 or 5. This is a new guest. I'm not familiar with this viewer. Rob, any relation to Jim or Shane Davis?
No.
And this is not a rebroadcast. We are live.
Correct.
We are live, and we are. Yes,
Somebody press on, you made it to the
manifest destiny. You say it will happen. We're getting to our last 15 minutes of our show, and we could talk all night.
The question is, which Jim Davis? Because there's 2.
Oh.
There was one that was an actor, and then there was one that created Garfield.
And
I always get accused of being a relative of the Garfield one, and I'm not. My
anytime we talk about-
ancestry is Canadian.
There's a lot of Davises, yeah.
So
Jim, if you haven't looked at Garfield minus Garfield, has everybody seen that?
Yes.
Somebody has taken Garfield
Classic.
out of the cartoon, and it's just Jim, John looking like a lunatic. It's hilarious. And Jim Davis
He's talking to
endorses it.
himself.
He's just
Yeah.
standing there just like Garfield minus Garfield. I love it. One of my favorite things ever. Pat, okay. As usual, we've run off the rails. It's what we do.
Yeah, as usual.
For everybody out there, Pat and his team have created an incredible product, Nations and Cannons. They're Flag Bearer
that
games.
looks so good.
And they are on Kickstarter right now. They put the Revolutionary War into you use the D&D 5th edition rules, and people can create characters and jump in and play. Right now, they are kickstarting a campaign book, right? Is that the right?
A source book with it's got a bunch of adventures that cover the first half of the war. It's a big topic, so we decided to split it into 2 books because we are nothing if not ambitious. It's and that also has so it goes along with the core rule book. And then
Which is
the
available
other half,
online free, correct?
yes, the that is available online.
Okay.
Educators can request it. That we'll send it out for free, and then the physical hardcover is available as another tier within the Kickstarter. You can get both products at the same time.
Cool.
We also have new character classes, items, annotated maps. So we've got atlases of North America, and so what we've done, we've gone through and kind of charted out points of interest. You can do fun things like. Here's Philadelphia and here's his demographics, and here's where the British defensive line was when they captured the city in 1778. And if you show up in Ben Franklin's house, here's a table where you can roll and see which one of his inventions is lying around. No steam boilers, unfortunately. But
Leyden jars.
Yeah, so we got Leyden jar is something that we're working with it. Not quite to the offensive electrical weapon capacity. We're thinking we wanted to do something like a almost like a defibrillator, like
cool. Shock you back into
or do the opposite, put you out.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey George, come here, hold this.
And those
Benedict,
maps.
come here. Let me show you something.
So I have a quick question for you. Do you have pitfalls like cholera or dysentery or something like that?
This ain't Oregon Trail.
They're fun. It's tricky because
or a musket ball through the head,
Yeah, well, diseases are something that are obviously very important to the war, but you can't really role play around. Oh, now I have smallpox and I'm probably gonna die, right? we want to like build a whole rule set, and we have a Patreon. We have some experimental content, and one of those is a rogue subclass called the Surgeon. And so the Surgeon gets a bunch of like healing abilities. They can, a sawbones basically. They've got poultices and stuff like that.
Saw the legs off.
Yeah, and so we're that's one of the things, humoral medicine is insane, right? Because they were so close to modernity. They had like a lot of good ideas and a lot of really bad ones.
Really?
If you're ever, looking for a horror trip late at night, just read up on how George Washington died. Because he
they
got
bled
this
him to death.
really bad, sore throat, and the cure was worse than his illness. It was
bled him to death.
he died in absolute agony, right? But like that's fun material for us to create abilities out of, is to like, all right, bloodletting. Bloodletting is an ability where you can take damage to roll to see if you overcome a disease or a poison. But it might fail. And I'm very proud of this one. You can use it against an opponent as a method of subterfuge. So let's say that you are posing as the medic, in a British encampment, right? You walk up and you're like, yes, Commander Sir, I'm here to take care of you. And you intentionally bleed him a little too much so that
let out a few of those bad humors.
My bad.
Yeah.
My bad. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Going back, we got great chat tonight. Yeah. So can you saw your damaged leg off? Yeah. And then we answered that. Yep. That's so cool. I love it.
Yeah.
And Rob.
When you do it.
Yeah, how do you feel about lasagna and Mondays? Back to and Vic's saying you're not nice enough for your ancestors to come from Canada. Rob's one of the nicest guys. He's like the only nice guy on the show. But Vic says he jokes. Okay, Vic. Yeah, Rob's. Yeah.
Vic and I are constantly picking on each other.
Yeah.
We call him Tadpole. He calls me Venerable.
Yeah. But why would you want to do that? Oh wait, to convert. Oh, I thought you thought to convert Brits, not convert to. Okay, yeah. Can you
so we've got a subclass that's called. We've got a subclass called the Turncoat. It's a fighter subclass, right? This is your Benedict Arnold, and they pick. I think it's called a chicanery. They pick a chicanery to specialize in, right? And so they can either be a mercenary, a sort of an operative, or they can specialize in poisons. They get an ability called Stranglehold, which they can do the kind of Assassin's Creed thing where they run up, take a guy by the throat and use them as a human shield, ways that they can kind of bluff their way past enemy lines, try and recruit the British to fire upon themselves. My favorite ability they get is something they can use when they do a Stranglehold, where you can put a buddy of yours, as long as they're willing, in a headlock and do the action movie cliche of "Don't shoot, I'm on your side," right?
Yeah,
to the British,
like Blazing Saddles. With the
yes.
Yeah.
And when we were balancing this, right, we forgot to include. This is typically, for D&D, because it's a wide-ranging game. There are all types of effects and scenarios you have to kind of prepare for. So usually effects like that, they have a kind of a clause so that it doesn't work on creatures of low intelligence. Yeah. So we did it. We had an encounter. One of the enemies that we have, in addition to redcoats and Hessians and indigenous warriors, are animals, mountain lions, the moose in particular. And when we were playtesting it, I had a buddy of mine put his ally in a headlock and say, "I try and convince the moose that I'm on its side." And I realized we had to make an adjustment right then and there.
That's why you do play testing.
Okay. You took it to its extreme, so we have to, because of you, we have to make a rule. You see, honey? Because
during the Revolutionary War, that the British couldn't figure out a lot of the American tactics, because that was the introduction of guerrilla warfare. How much does that
guerrillas
play? Yeah,
learned from the.
They're not playing fair.
Well, the term Widowmaker today actually has its, for a sniper or sharpshooter, has its origins in this time period, because famously, right, the American riflemen would hide in the woods and they would take pot shots at British officers. And the officers had like regalia, they had gorgets and fancy hats that would distinguish themselves. So they were pretty easy targets to spot even from a distance. And really what we're trying to, the idea is that the players are a party of light infantry or spies, right? They're cut above the average guy, right? So in order to challenge them in a combat scenario, it's not 1 versus 1, right? It's your group of like 6 guys and girls, right? Versus 10, 20, 30, even 40 British regulars. But if you get the drop on them, if you ambush a patrol, right, and you're coming into the field with we've got a loadout system, so you can have your musket, but then a brace of pistols across your chest, like Blackbeard. So you're rolling up, dual wielding. You could be a rifleman who specializes in just carrying a couple of different loaded, like heavy, long range Kentucky rifles. Lots of different ways where that first round of combat is incredibly lethal, and if you get the drop on somebody, you can blow away half a regiment. Or have a platoon in that turn and really turn the tide of the battle to your advantage. So really trying to lean into that heroic fantasy of the light.
Initiative is important.
Yes, if you're a game master running Nations and Cannons, do not ambush your players. We state this in the rules very clearly because they will die. You're not unless they've failed completely and have zero self-awareness and are marching into something.
So
hey Pat,
are frowned upon.
We're getting to our last 5 minutes, and we could go on for a long time. This has been a great conversation. Vic saying have Peter Clinton is from England, and he has drawn a Steam Patriots cover. He's done a great job. He's a great sport. He knows we love him. And then Infrafan saying pretend to be a lost moose. There you go. You'll be okay. In the last 5 minutes, I want Pat to give us some strategies. How you guys are knocking it out of the park with your campaign. What did you do leading up to it? What are you doing during the campaign? What has been your crowdfunding strategy?
What's your secret? What is your
secret? Part of it, I think, and Scott, you're gonna be very familiar with this because he's been working on this project for 10 years now, right? We've had a long tail of development, and so we've just been trying to gather our fan base, And one thing that we do, we post free content every week online, every week when I can. Sometimes it's every 2 weeks, sometimes it's every 3. But we try to post in process updates and playtest stuff just so people can see it. And that builds community, builds word of mouth. Reddit has been particularly really helpful for that. Once we got into it, we're really trying to create some of these linkages with other people that are doing cool stuff. There's a history blogger that I really liked that I reached out to, and he's going to be helping us because one of the additional products that we have with this new book is a small little book, a pamphlet called Poor Richard's Almanac, again bringing it back to Ben, right? Which is going to be weather rules and little pithy aphorisms in the words, right? So it's like finding the people that are deeply invested in this subject matter and trying to reach out to their communities. And on YouTube, we're talking with some bloggers and some folks that do reenactment stuff, really casting as wide a net as we can around the nucleus, which is a love of history, but it has so many different expressions, and so you just got to find those communities and make inroads into them. And hopefully we can help you guys out, right?
We would love it. We would love it. With these matches, this one's made in heaven. This one's a great one. And when you were telling me you start at the beginning of the war and you the people you've thought of and the characters, we love it. And Rory and I we're just like we gotta talk to these guys. So we are incredibly, Rory and I especially thankful that Pat that you have taken the time to be on our show. The Wednesday crew, we talk about anything and all things comic books and pop culture, and you have fit in perfectly. we love the idea. If we could do a night, doesn't have to be a Wednesday. If we could do a one-shot night
yeah.
where we
Oh,
run
count me in.
on
Hell yeah.
an encounter, I don't know. It'd be fun. Last 2 minutes, everybody. Now, when we wrap up here, get over to Kickstarter.com, search Nations and Cannons, and you will find
We actually
you'll probably
have
watch
a vanity URL that we've put up there.
Okay.
It is yourdadwilllovethis.com.
Oh my goodness. All right. Your dad will love this.com. Love it.
Oh,
Love
that's
it.
hilarious.
You'll go over, you'll watch their little green number go because they're killing it. They're doing an awesome job. Shameless plug here, of course. Rory and I and the Silverline team have Steam Patriots #2 as well over there on Kickstarter.com. We do not have a vanity URL. Just search Steam Patriots. But we're Silverline and Steam Patriots. We're all over all the socials. We are teamed up with Ron Fortier's Beyond the Stars #2. That is an epic, sprawling sci-fi story, and I say sprawling from issue one. Issue one just gives you the scope of it. It's big. It's awesome. It's going to be a 6-issue series, So if you could go check that out as well, we're asking for your pennies and dollars so we can make Steam Patriots #2. When I say happen, just get it into your hands because it's done. All you're doing is pre-ordering our comic book, and we would love to get onto our stretch goals. We've got some goodies, some extras, and Vic wants to play as a moose. And Jose says he's coming for the one shot. Oh man, I think you'd have like 15 of us wanting to play. Roll for initiative, and it'll be and it's the only Steam Patriots is only one of the 2 weird twists on historical fictions. And then we got Wolf Hunter. Wolf Hunter is a great historical book as well by Tim TK. It is 9 p.m. Pat, I would love to go into a second hour. Rory and I actually are going to be jumping over, for all of our fans out there, to Pop Anime Comics. If you go to Silverline, we are sharing it there. If you go to Steam Patriots on Facebook, we're sharing it there. But we're going to be talking about Steam Patriots over on another show. Pat, you have been an amazing guest. You are welcome back anytime to talk about all things nerdy.
Thank you for being here.
It doesn't have to be the Revolutionary War. We are definitely going to be promoting Nations and Cannons because it's such a cool thing.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Of course, Pat, you've been a great guest. I feel like we barely scratched the surface. Before we go, we all good? Rob, Barb, Brent. Hi, Brent. Sorry.
Hey, Brent.
Brent was just kind of here
observing.
I got to click over here, find our stream end Silverline. Is that the right one? I always do the wrong one. All right, and we're gonna say goodbye. We like to say before we go, make mine
Silverline.
I'm April Hunter. Make mine Silverline.
All right.